Hello, everybody. This is Angela from Empowered Your Thoughts, and I am joined with Rachel and Rebecca today. And today we are going to go over judgment. What is judgment? How to release judgment? How does judgment affect us? And some tools to kind of move through that. So, how do you guys feel about that topic today?
I think it's a big topic in this time right now. I see a lot of judgment coming from a place of harshness towards others and how they're choosing to handle the situation that we're finding ourselves in right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think that now that the shock has worn off about what's going on in the world, we're kind of getting back to a place where, because I feel like we were kind of in a place where in our country in particular, that we were being very judgmental of each other's opinions and the way that we may choose to live our lives. And there's a lot of judgment that happens in our country. And I feel like we were kind of united for a little while there when this pandemic hit. And now that the newness and the shock of it has worn off, I see old judgment patterns are starting to find their way back into our interactions with each other. You know, and mostly it's virtual, but It's still happening. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's giving, because it's virtual, people feel a little bit safer to judge, maybe because there's that barrier there.
Or maybe they don't have people to talk to, like they're in the office or at school or at work or wherever they're at with friends, so they don't have that time to like gossip, or not gossip, maybe verbally process.
Yeah,
right.
Well, I kind of want to go over what is judgment and why do we need to release it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's important to recognize that what judgment is. So I think for most of us, judgment is like conditional. It's like a conditioned, ingrained response that we do often without even realizing it. So I think it comes from a place of like disconnect from others and our higher selves, and ultimately a disconnect from love itself. And I think another thing with judgment, I think we've been conditioned from a young age to judge, not even realizing the damage that we're inflicting on ourselves or others. And I think it's like maybe a set of rules or perceptions that we've created in order to make us feel safe, in order to fit in whatever box or social upbringing that we're in. And I don't think we realize it, how damaging it is to us and to others. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that we are conditioned from an early age to there are expectations that are put on all of us. We put them on ourselves, but if we don't fit into those expectations, then we're not part of the club. We're not part of what is the accepted norm. And so there's something wrong with us. And so
I think that's a good point, because I think when you're a kid and you're trying to fit in, especially when you're at school and you're trying to fit in and you're finding who you are and how you fit in within the groups, and maybe a couple girls come up to you and they want to talk about another girl, that you're like, oh, they're talking to me. I feel like that's how you kind of start, especially for girls. I know that it's not maybe as much for boys growing up, but for girls to fit in, you feel like you have to be judgy as well. I know that I saw that a lot growing up in elementary school, with other girls choosing to judge somebody else. And then in order for them to fit in, they go along with it.
I also think too that we have judgments to maybe sometimes make us feel safe or justified, you know, like, oh, I'm going to follow this rule, or anybody who does that is bad because this is my right, this is my wrong, and these are what I'm supposed to do. Like, you know, oh, that person is crossing the crosswalk without the light going on, you know, and how dare they, that's so unsafe, and they have, you know, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of times we have judgmental thoughts and we don't even realize we're doing it.
No, absolutely. And it does come from a young age. Like, I think, and that's part of it. I remember when we were kids having this idea that smoking was so bad. And I still don't 100% agree with that. I don't think that it's like the healthiest thing to do, but I don't look at someone and say, oh my God, they're smoking. Like, it doesn't bother me. When I was a kid, I remember being so judgmental about, like, my sister, who was, oh my goodness, I think she was 14 at the time, and she would sneak and smoke with her friends, and I would go tell on her because I felt so righteous in the fact that she was doing something wrong and I needed to tell on her to save her.
Oh, I told all my brothers when I found them smoking
Oh,
too.
yeah.
I think that's a big one for me because I think I was raised, I mean, most people, I'm just going to age myself, who was raised with parents in the 80s probably had a lot of smoking because, it was more acceptable back then in a lot of ways, like 70s, 80s. I don't think
I
they were
think
like,
they still smoked inside a lot.
yeah.
Too. Yeah.
And so I remember telling them, and I think too, like for me, it was something like you either become a smoker or you don't. Like I think your judgment or your belief is based on something, and it could even be like drinking soda or eating sugar or
Yeah.
having a messy house or having a clean house, like whatever it is that you were like brought up in. Sometimes you either
Well, that's what it is. It's you're being brought up. It is the conditioning of the people that are raising you too, that help you create those judgments.
Well,
And
that was kind of,
it's just like I was told not to do this, and maybe in another household somebody else was told something completely different. So it doesn't mean that they're wrong or that you're right.
right, but from an early age, like, I was rewarded for telling on my sister for smoking. Like, oh good, I did something right, and so that is that conditioning that happened early on. Is okay, there is a distinct line of what is right and what is wrong, and if they're doing something that I have been told or I perceive this is wrong, then I'm going to judge them and I'm going to tell on them. So I think it's early conditioning.
Yeah, and I think too, like with that, it goes into our neural pathways.
Mm-hmm.
The thoughts or the judgments are created as a reality for us, and that's tied into our emotions, and it's tied into like our self-worth, or it's tied into our conditioning, our feeling self-righteous or feeling in control.
Right.
I think that's another thing too. Like I can control my outside circumstances because I am in the right, and and I think too we have to touch on like what is judgment and how can we release it.
So I think that there are certain judgments that are necessary. We are brought up in a society where we do need to have some judgment, but there is a difference. There's a difference between the types of judgment that we're talking about and the types of judgment that are actually creating blocks for you in your well-being, in your spiritual well-being, in your mental well-being, and also just what you're trying to create in your life and the lives for the people around you. And you may not even recognize that you're having those judgmental thoughts, and those are creating these issues within you. And
Right.
so being able to recognize what is a judgmental thought, what that kind of a judgmental thought in yourself, being able
Because there's a difference between judgment and discernment, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a discernment between there's different kinds of judgments. Right. So there's a judgment of, okay, that person is not doing something right because it's really not right. Like you don't kill people, so we're going to judge someone if they're out killing somebody, but
right.
There's a difference
or hurting somebody.
If they're hurting someone, but there's a difference between judging someone because of a life choice or something that they're doing that does not resonate with you. And so you are creating a block within yourself because it's reflecting back on you. That judgment that you are actually putting out onto that person, you are actually judging yourself. You're creating, it does not resonate with what it is that you are trying to do. but you don't even realize you're doing it. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Yeah, so it's like when it's coming from a place of fear or
Mm-hmm.
a lower vibrational emotion.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're like, so I think you can maybe tell by a thought that's judgmental when it's triggering a lower vibration by the way it makes you feel.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
agree. Yeah, I think that's the difference. Is and I'm not gonna I don't want to get political with this, but I think that that's a good example because I think that a lot of people can relate to that. Is you have your own beliefs, especially I think as I've gotten older, I've started to have my own opinions about politics, and there are times and I'm recognizing this in myself when someone gets really political that I cringe and my whole body gets rigid and I feel it like I'm like irritated. I'm irritated with them. Like, what is that? I never had that before when I was younger, but as I've gotten older and kind of formed my own judgments and my own opinions, I've had to just recognize that I have been responding in that way. But the key there is the reaction that I'm having, that feeling that it's bringing up for me of irritation right there is exactly what we're talking about.
Right, because it's how it vibrates in your body. And when I'm seeing something about someone's personal opinion that might not be my opinion, then for me, it's like they're absolutely entitled to have that opinion. And I read it or I hear it, and I'm like, okay, I mean, that's a different way of thinking about it. But if it's coming through them with a place of angry because other people don't believe the way they believe, they feel, then it's a different feeling for me. It's like, oh, it's not about what they feel or how they feel about it. It's about the anger they're bringing, the vibration that they're bringing through with it. Dare you not believe the way that I believe? But if they're like, well, this is how I believe, then it's like, oh, okay. That's one way of looking at it. Thank you for sharing. But when it comes through in that angry way, then it's my walls go up, and then I feel like I am judging the way that they're bringing it forward.
Yeah, and that's hard. I think that this particular subject is hard because we do cling. I think you mentioned that, Angela. We cling to our judgments.
Yeah,
because it's like a sense of safety and control, and we want to know that we're right. We want to be right in what our thinking is.
Well, and I think too, like when we are having, like before we make a judgment, we can, ask ourselves, like, where does this emotion or judgment come from? Is it coming from an event or a trauma from our own experience that we're being triggered to judge? Are we operating from a place of pain or disconnection?
or fear. A lot of people are judging.
Fear. Is it my own thought or thoughts putting in my head?
Right.
Well, it goes back to autopilot, I guess. I think a lot of people are on autopilot these days, and you don't even recognize it. So every time we're doing this kind of soul work, it all goes back to assessing. Like, first you got to recognize that you're doing it, and then you have to start analyzing maybe why or where is this stemming from in me, so that you can start growing through it.
Yeah.
Because if you're not willing to recognize that you're even doing it, you're like, well, yeah, I mean, whatever, but still continue, then you're just going to continue the same patterns and continue to have those same blocks.
And I really like this idea where it says, where I've read before, by accepting or realizing the darkness you see in another, the darkness may be the same challenges you see in yourself, which is a disowned part of your own shadow.
Yeah.
So, and I think that can help you see the difference between judgment and insight or discernment. When you're trying to figure out, like, between why is I'm judging this, or is this really something that's going to hurt me or harm me, right? Or why am I feeling so strongly about this? I am right, or oh, that person did that, or she's wearing that, or he said that to his kid, or whatever. It's so easy to snap and be like, oh, well, they're wrong, or whatever, or how dare they? But really, it's like, okay, what part of myself has such a strong emotional tie to this, and what in me is calling that forward?
Yeah, it's really an
Right.
opportunity for growth.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
if we look at it from that perspective, like, why am I feeling so strongly about this? What is coming up in me that I am supposed to be looking at? And that shadow work is, it's hard for some people, to want to deal with, because we do tend to want to shy away from or run away from anything that's uncomfortable. But
Right.
if we use it as an
It's hard right
opportunity
now.
for growth, yeah, I know. Yeah, it is hard. But if we
With
use it as
yourself.
an opportunity for growth and say, okay, I'm ready to grow through this, and what is this that my shadow self is trying to teach me or to tell me?
Why am I judging this?
Why?
You
Yeah.
know, and by recognizing why we're judging something and asking ourselves, is this judgment, is this thing that I'm judging, does it affect me personally, right?
Mhm.
What I'm judging affect me personally. Because there's a difference there too. If you're judging something, but it has nothing to do with you, it's not going to affect your life. It's
Right.
not going to come into your bubble of protection, if you will, or into your home.
Mhm.
Judge it. If it's not going to affect you, how is that going to affect your body if you're judging something that doesn't have anything to do with you,
Mhm.
right? So it's
So I think that it goes back to that fear where a lot of people have convinced themselves that it will affect them because they're
right.
coming from a place of fear. So, like, if a certain politician were to win, that's going to affect me in this way, but it's stemming from fear. Or the thing about the masks right now that we're seeing, I don't know if you guys have been paying attention, but
Yeah.
people are being very judgmental of other people not wearing masks. And I get it, because that is kind of a harder thing to say, okay, we've been very, very careful, and whenever we go out, we're wearing masks, and then other people are not. And so they're infringing on me, like trying to be protective and not continuing this way of life, because I feel like it extends it. But on the other hand, you've got the other side of it, which is they may have a reason why they're not wearing a mask. I
Well,
read
medical
something.
reason. There might be a medical reason.
Well, I just read something about this.
And
This,
there's conflicting stories.
yes, there is.
Mhm.
So
Like,
it goes back to
you're
perception.
yeah, it's like,
Right.
which one do you listen to?
Mm-hmm,
Like, are you on this side and you're on this side? And whether it's our
right
social
or wrong.
economical situation, it's such a split right now.
Right,
Like,
right.
there's this side or this side, and it used to be more like, but
Yeah.
it's so divided in
Well,
this way
because
or
we
this
do
way.
feel like, and I'm sorry, Angela, I didn't mean to interrupt
Okay.
you. What Rebecca was saying about, if this doesn't affect my bubble of safety, well, in this circumstance, they're thinking it does, like it
Mhm.
could. And
Mhm.
so, like, I was reading earlier, this woman was saying, how frustrated she is because she's asthmatic. And she's trying really hard to go, when she goes grocery shopping, she's wearing a mask. She feels like the people that are choosing not to wear a mask because they want to demonstrate their right to not wear a mask, or they feel like it infringes on their freedom to choose not to, she feels like they are endangering her right to because she's asthmatic, and if she gets this, she feels like she could be in trouble. And then the response was, because this was on a forum, the response was from one of the women in the community said, I'm pregnant, and when I wear a mask, I can't breathe, and I start to hyperventilate, and it's not good for the baby. And then I won't put a mask on my 2-year-old daughter because she freaks out and she starts screaming her head off. So I'm not going to torture my daughter, to make her wear a mask, because that's my right to do so. So you can
Right.
really see where that's coming from, both sides of that, and it is a tough situation that we're
Well,
in.
we're talking about masks right now, but this can be applied to any kind
Absolutely.
of. You can put yourself in the other person's shoes.
Exactly.
Know that your opinion is merely only one opinion,
Yes.
and that there are hundreds of thousands of opinion on one topic.
Right.
Who's to say that your opinion is the only right opinion?
And you can have that thought, that frustration. It's not that you're not allowed to. it's the anger and the frustration
Right.
that comes along with it. That's what we're talking about, that
Yeah.
vibration.
The vibration. Yeah.
They're wrong and I'm right, and I'm going to be angry with them.
Right. And the biggest reason why we wanted to talk about this topic of judgment today is because when you are judging, you are lowering that vibration. It affects your entire being.
Mm-hmm.
You lower your vibration because of a judgment out of whether it be fear,
Mm-hmm.
securities, or conditioning even. Judging somebody or something for what they're doing is separating you from love.
Yeah.
It's a separation from love. It's a separation from the whole. And lowering your vibration, and this is scientifically proven, when you are in a state of fear and lower vibration, you are more susceptible to getting sick.
Mm-hmm.
So anything that you can do to release these lower vibrations is going to help boost your immunity and, bring your vibration up.
Yeah, absolutely.
So sometimes judging others or even ourselves can bring in feelings of shame and low self-esteem problems, and being able to recognize when you're judging and then not judge yourself for judging, so that, because that can bring in that the same thing that we were talking about, lowering our vibration, feeling bad that we judged somebody. And so it's okay to recognize, oh, that was judgmental.
Mm-hmm.
And then release it and say, okay, I'm going to do better the next time. I'm going to, and I think a lot of people are taking that time now more than ever to say, that was kind of judgy of me. That was judgmental of me.
Yeah.
Recognizing it and being able to then release it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think too, like, we make comments where it comes out of our mouth and we don't even realize how judgmental it sounds. Like, for example, like saying, oh, that person's some nationality, or that person, or that's just what women do, or that's just what men do.
Or that's what, it's the millennial for you. I've actually said that. Sorry, millennials.
You know,
and too.
But you don't realize, like, that's even a judgment,
Yeah.
It's just like, I remember working at the bank and having like the 80 or 90-year-olds come in, and their terminology for like different races is not the same as today, or it's not PC, and they don't, in their mind, they're not being judgmental because they were raised with this mindset.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is kind of off topic, but I think that what Becca, you were kind of touching on too, like self-judgment. I think that's a big one. I think judging others, but also judging yourself and being super hard and judgy of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I think that also stems from judging others. If you're very self-judgmental or self-critical, it's easier, I think, or maybe not easier, but some tend to maybe have other judgments of others because it's a reflection
Right.
of what you're feeling inside.
Well,
and that comes back to love, right?
Yeah.
So this is reminding me of our blog that we did on self-love and the importance of not judging yourself or being too harsh on yourself. It's the same thing with other people.
Right.
And that reflects back, because we are all connected. I don't know whether or not you believe that or not. We are all connected. We are all in this together. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We want to feel loved, and we want to love ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And we want to be accepted. I mean, that's the majority of people. Even, as I find myself getting older, I have this attitude in my 40s of like, no, if you don't like me, I don't care. And I think there's a lot of people that I see that are saying that now, like, well, you either love me or hate me, take me or leave me. But I think at the heart of it, we want to feel connected. We don't want to be an outsider. We don't want to feel judged. We want to be able to have, and that goes back to beginning of, starting at school and elementary school and finding your clique and finding your personality within these groups of kids and stuff, is that feeling connected. And, judging others, like we said before, makes you feel a disconnection from source, from other people. Yeah.
And I think,
Go ahead.
nope.
I was just going to say that it's because you're not accepting yourself. That's the disconnect. Is it coming back when you talk about that shadow work, when you are rejecting others, you're actually rejecting a part of yourself.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I also think it's important to realize that judgment is almost a tool of separation too, of those who want to be in control, whether it be, I don't know, an organization or a family or anything, any sort of social structure, that all of us are existed in. When you have something that there are a lot of judgments to be followed, and you feel justified because you feel safe within this container of this set of rules, judgment is a very good tool to keep people from feeling disconnected and not feeling that self-love and not feeling our divine sovereignty that we all have a right to.
Yes.
And I think that more and more people are recognizing that.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's hard because I'm not pointing out one particular organization or religion, but I think that there are a lot of religions that use the judgment for control.
Right.
They
even in the corporate world, you have a set of rules, a set of what's appropriate and what isn't appropriate. A set of expectations of how your work ethic is, or maybe not work ethic, but how you maintain certain structures, or even in families, this is how our family does it. And I don't think it's not like I'm pointing the finger at anybody and saying you are a tool of control and manipulation.
Right.
I'm saying that this is something that I think we've kind of grown up in as a society and as a world,
right,
and recognizing that there is a different way, that this isn't a new concept, it's just a concept we've forgotten. We've chosen to forget and ignore it, when even Jesus was into non-judgment. It's not a new concept.
No. It's that those judgments are there, have been put into place for separation, within society. Judgment creates this separateness, and then it creates these groups, and then there's so many groups, and there's so many people, and it's this division that we are not all one, that we are not all in this together.
Right.
You keep hearing this, we're in this together, but then you're seeing a lot of pointing fingers and judging going on, and it's all around fear.
And I think it's honestly, I see it as a growth, not only for individuals, but for the human consciousness at this time. We're kind of all we are in this together. We're floating in our individual rafts of this really crazy ocean that we're having to navigate. And it is very stressful. And I think I was talking to a coworker the other day, and I was explaining to her, I was like, I don't think we realize the stress that we're under being in quarantine, because we're just taking it a day at a time. And and it's easy to take those emotions and put them on someone else. Oh, you're not wearing a mask. Oh, you're not working hard enough. You're not taking a shower. whatever it is. And I think that those feelings can be magnified in times of stress and anxiety and fear.
So one of the things that you had mentioned, Angela, about like as a world, the consciousness of the world. One of the things that I noticed, and it seems like it was like getting increasingly worse in this country, especially in the US, is this divisiveness. You know, like we talked about the pendulum swinging, you know, one extreme or the other. We had this huge divide in this country. And my hope is that we're going to get to a place where we are recognizing the importance that even if we have different opinions, we are all in this together and we are united. We are united, we're all connected. And that was something that we were getting away from. And I think what we need to get back to that place as a whole. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And I think too, for any major shift or change to happen, the old has to fall away.
Right.
And the old has to like be shaken up and all the debris has to be fallen out. And I think, you know, we've had some really crazy, and I'm just talking about our country because that's where I live and that's my experience. But you know, we've had some major shifts in leadership over the last 10 years, and you know, in this is the way we need to do it. No, this is the way we do it. You know, and I think that's okay. I mean, I think that's where non-judgment and forgiveness needs to come in, because we can get caught up in all the drama that's out there. Or we can come back and be like, I'm going to practice non-judgment. I'm going to practice mindfulness. And it's not going to take, honestly, it's not going to take the country to change. It's going to take the individuals on an individual level, radiating out to their circle of friends and family and their circle of friends and soul family and on to affect that change. And I think more people who are self-aware and taking ownership of their self-growth is going to really make a change. And I think that's kind of what the times we're in right now. Like you said, we are giving this opportunity. Anytime you have something happen in your life that looks like it's a bag of lemons, you can choose to either use it as a failure or an opportunity. I tell my son all the time, failing is not, failing is another step to success. Failing is not a failure. Failing is an opportunity to change or do better or to succeed. You know, you can fail to succeed in whatever, whether it be goals or human growth or, you know, whatever it is.
So it's really, you know, now is a time to go inward. You know, while we're having to, it's a time to really take this step inward and look at ourselves and do the work on ourselves. And so that brings up, like, how can we release judgment? What can we do to acknowledge? You know, the first step is to acknowledge that we're doing it. Stopping yourself and saying, okay, that was a judgment, that was judgy. Was it a necessary judgment? And if it wasn't a necessary judgment, how can you stop doing that?
Well, and I think too, to remember that it's good that we're not alone in judgment. Everybody does it. We all judge.
Oh yeah.
You know, I mean, it's just kind of something us as humans do.
Well, that you're never going to get it completely away from it either. I think I've talked to people that said that they've been working on judgment for 40 years and they still have those judgmental thoughts. You can't be hard on yourself when you recognize, oh, that was really judgmental, you know, like I'm such a bad person. You've got to be able to recognize it and then move past it. And
don't beat yourself up for judging. You're not the only one that does it. Everyone judges. It's something that's conditioned. It's, you know, but there are tools that can help you so that you feel better about yourself and you don't feel this separation from others.
Well, and I think too, as you, as us, or as an individual who grows and moves through things, it does have a ripple effect to those around us too.
Well, that was what you were saying, Angela, about, yes, this is like a world consciousness, like, you know, everyone, it needs to happen. But the only way for that to happen is for individuals to start working on themselves, and then it radiates out.
And to understand that that's okay. that they're allowed to, that this is our, you know, we are so powerful in the beings that we are, in the spiritual beings we are in this human experience. And that if anybody tells you that you're not powerful or you're unworthy, that is not their right, you know, because, or yourself, if you tell yourself that, you know, that is not in true alignment or connection. And judgment is another stepping stone or another rock, or I don't know, another thing that we can overcome.
It's an obstacle. Yeah,
another obstacle. Thank you. I was like thinking of skipping on rocks, you know, on a river or something. But I mean, there are some ways that we can help release judgment. What do you think, Becca? What are some ways that you can think of releasing them?
Well, you know, as you were saying that, it just brought into mind how powerful we are, powerful, and how powerful our thoughts are, right? And the name of our business or this company, Empower Your Thoughts, you know, judgments lower that vibration of your thoughts. And when you can recognize that you're having a lower vibrational thought, a judgment that is harsh, I think that right there is a powerful tool in just recognizing. Recognizing is the first step to being able to release it and stop it. But being able to, one of the ways that I feel is powerful in releasing judgment and I personally have worked with, is to acknowledge that person and why they might be feeling or acting or doing a certain thing. And then you can take a step back, right? And not judge it so harshly. And
I think recognizing is not the same as condoning it either.
Right.
No, for sure.
Well, you can recognize that you don't have to condone it. You don't have to think that it's okay. But you're recognizing that you're judging it, right?
But I think it comes back to empathy too. You know, finding some empathy, finding yourself,
compassion,
putting yourself in the person's position, even if it's hard to, even if you can only find a little bit. If you can find that and then send unconditional love to the person or situation that you've been judging, you know, even if you don't condone it or agree with it, you don't have to agree with it.
One of it kind of reminds me of one of my Reiki sisters, and she was talking about how she's so funny. She was saying that somebody did really made her mad. I think it was while she was driving, and then she stopped and she sent love to that person and released it. You know, it's like she didn't want to have those angry thoughts or those judgmental thoughts. So when she has that, doesn't have to be friends with that person. She sends loving thoughts to that person and then releases it. And I was like, oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah. I think that's for me too. I've done that before, where I'll be driving and I'll see someone driving like a speed demon or being, you know, not considerate.
Was it?
No, I don't think so. Maybe. But I always surround them in light. I always see, you know, to protect them from maybe their unsafe driving that they're doing, and to protect others. But it's not necessarily like they're being an idiot kind of, you know, it's not a place of anger. It's more of just surround them in light, because, you know.
And also recognizing that your judgment might be that, they're speeding and they're being reckless, but you have no idea
what their situation is,
why they're speeding. They might be needing to get to the hospital, or, you know, they're late for something, or, you know, so just also recognizing, again, having compassion and understanding that there might be a reason that they're doing.
Absolutely.
Well, not
or necessarily.
They may just are an asshole, and
and they're just speeding, or they're cutting people off. Yeah.
Around in the light, you know?
Yeah.
And it's okay to have those feelings of, you know, for a minute of being pissed and angry, and we are human, so we all have moments of saying you know, well, I mean, hopefully I learned at a young age not to do that, because I ended up in line next to the person who cut me off She flipped me off. I flipped her off. I was really young, and we ended up at Kinko's because I was leaving work to go get coffees done, and she was in line behind me at Kinko's, and it was really embarrassing. And I think we were both very humbled. And hopefully that day she learned not to do that either. She was young as well.
What a perfect opportunity for growth of two souls.
It was really funny.
Together.
It was really funny. And I think it was probably the first time that I allowed myself to get angry and do something like that, where I'm like, you know, because she did it to me. She's like, and I went back, and with the gestures, you know, and it was really embarrassing for both of us. We were both red in the face. I could tell it was just uncomfortable. We wouldn't look at each other. Now today, if something like that happened, which I can't imagine myself getting that angry that I would allow myself to do that. But if I could go back and be in that situation again, I probably would say, I'm really sorry. You know, I allowed the best of, you know, that to get.
Because you don't know what was going on. You don't know what that other person was dealing with in that moment.
So she had to get somewhere fast, and so did I, and we ended up
had to get to Kinko's.
For work. Well, and I think another tool for judgment is turning that judgment into a validating statement. And I think it goes back to where I've talked about this before, and this is more of a self-judgment, where I would tell myself I'm a horrible person for whatever reason, and then I would turn around and say, no, I'm a great person. I'm a wonderful person. So you could be like, oh, that person is such a, insert word here, and you could be like, that person, that soul is a divine person who deserves love.
Yes.
Doesn't mean I condone whatever, you know, but just by changing your perception, or maybe that statement in your mind of that other person, it shifts it.
Yes.
You know.
Well, and I think also, I think we talked about this too with the whole self-judgment, is that inner child. And so, you know, and some of this stuff is not like the woman at Kinko's that you're, you know, looking, you're, you would flip off her inner child if she was a child. But, you know, that there are people in our lives that it's a little bit harder to forgive or to not judge, because we have a deeper connection with them. And so it makes us feel more strongly, I think, about those judgments that we're having, and being able to really look at the inner child in them, you know, and healing, you know. So it's the same thing. I think we did talk about healing the inner child in ourselves. We can also have empathy for the inner child in them, and what that inner child has gone through, and what they're going through. I think that kind of might help too.
Yeah, it's that yin and yang of seeing that darkness in another person that you see in yourself, and then also seeing that inner child in another person that you see in yourself.
Yeah.
You know, we have all had traumas or things in our life that has happened, whether they're big or small things, you know, like somebody make an offhand comment that really affected you, or a major trauma that really, you know, changed your whole life, and how you think about things. And I think part of a tool of releasing judgment is really learning to practice compassion. You know, self-compassion and compassion for others, especially in this time that we're in.
Right.
In the environment that the world is in right now, in the state that the world is in right now, we need more of that. We need more compassion. We need more love, and forgiveness. I think too. Like, you know, I think right now a lot of darkness is coming up in the world. A lot of darkness is being, the light is shining on a lot of darkness that is coming out, that you're like, I didn't know that was that. I didn't know that was that.
Right.
And, you know, I think there's a lot of just, you know, and a lot of them, from my own personal experience, are certain belief systems being called out in certain things that are very public, or even political figures that are being called out that's very public, corruption and things that are being called out. And even on an individual level, people in this confinement, they're not able to, a lot of the broken patterns are being highlighted that you cannot get away from. I know a lot of people who are splitting up. I know a lot of people who are you know, they can't hide from the darkness,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
you know?
Absolutely.
And it's also very important to realize that bring in that compassion, bring in that love. If somebody's acting out, ask them why. So I have an example. I had this customer at work. We had charged the card on a reoccurring charge. And he emailed me and he just went off calling me all these names, like all the cuss words and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of getting upset, I stopped and I stepped back and I emailed back. I'm like, you know, it sounds like you're going through a really rough time and I'm really sorry that you're going through this. What can I do to help?
Mm-hmm.
And he emailed instantly back and was like, I'm just lost my job. I'm homeless. Things, you know, and he wasn't, you know, and he's like, I'm really sorry, you know, and I think I could have gotten really mad at that, you know, that coming at me, you know, and being like, screw you, da 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 da. But, you know, I just kind of stopped and was like, okay, this is a very extreme reaction. What's going on with you? You know?
Yeah, you could have let it trigger you
Right.
into a response that matched his vibration, and instead you used it for an opportunity of growth.
Yeah.
To expand and really look into what was going on with him rather than judging him, right?
Well, I think, and part of me, I will be honest, was like, oh, I'm going to kill this with kindness. Like, you know, because I was just like, oh, this doesn't feel good.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, you know, it's like, I think most people react and they lash out. And our first response is to react and lash out. And taking a step back and being like, okay, I'm not going to accept this as a personal attack on me because I don't know this person. You know, like I've never been face to face. You know, I might have some sort of interaction with this person during professional or whatever involvement. And by, you know, and it was just kind of nice. It was kind of nice. I felt good because I was like, oh, you poor soul, you know, I know you're having a hard time. And I'm sure that, you know, that made that person go, oh, sorry.
Yeah, that compassion. And that goes back to that rippling too. You know, that if you're able to practice compassion and empathy and start releasing some of these judgments, you don't have to condone it. You don't have to agree with it. You just have to release the feelings, the vibrations that are being brought forth when you're having those thoughts, when you're having those judgmental thoughts. Because, you know, those judgmental thoughts may never go away, but at least if you are releasing some of the lower vibrational thoughts that are not in harmony with your true self, with your essence, then you are able to start pushing past that.
So I also think when you're releasing judgment, well, first recognizing judgment, recognizing the justifications that might come up with your judgments. Because sometimes we cling to our judgments because we've held them for so long. They're part of our human experience.
Right.
And so you find yourself asking, like, how does this make me feel? You know, and I think that's where you have the tools that can help you, like validating statements, using discernment and compassion in a situation. And then I also think too, things that we say all the time for tools of empowerment, meditation, mindfulness, connection with yourself. Those really, because judgment comes from a place of separation.
Right.
So you come to a place of connection, and whatever that means for you, and whatever tools, affirmations, meditation, swimming, exercising, going to nature. Nature's a big one, which is really hard in this confinement. You know, I see a lot of people like getting a lot of houseplants right now.
That's true.
Mine just died, but
no.
I got an EMF reader. I'm like seeing, okay, how much is the EMF in my house? The electromagnetic field going on in my house. It's not too
put
bad.
the plant in the in the safe zone.
Right. Well, I did notice behind my because we have the little water meters on the outside of my condo. In the bathroom, it's really strong.
Oh, isn't that
wow.
On the inside, yeah. So, but I thought it was going to be a lot more in my house. It's not, so that's good.
Well,
That's
good.
Yeah.
So what can we touch on what you said about validating statements?
So that's where, like, if you have a judgment on somebody like, oh, look at her clothes, or I don't know, or look at the car he drives. You know, you could be like, oh, maybe they're doing the best that they can. Or maybe they have their own individual style and that makes them feel good. you know, why am I judging this? Is it because at some point somebody made some comment to me where it made me feel like I was behaving in a way that was not appropriate? And so I'm very sensitive to the fact that that person is wearing a short skirt, or that guy is wearing Speedos or something. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know, I think with the judgment too, it's so integrated. It's so integrated in like you said, it's something that sometimes we've had for so long that we don't even recognize that we've been doing it it's part of who we are, you know. And one of the things, you know, I've noticed over the years, even at the age that I am, that women my age will point out another woman and say, look what she's wearing. And for me, that I have a judgment about them saying that to me, because to me, I've been because I've been judged like that before. And so,
because we're raised in a Puritan country.
Yeah.
Society has made women, well, and it's not only our country, I think it's just for us as women, we have had expectations on us, you know, like, oh, you have to be pretty, but don't be too pretty. And you have to be intelligent, but don't be too smart, you know, like, you know, oh, you have to be sexy, but don't be sexy, because
don't be too sexy.
So the act of someone pointing that out to someone else is like, let's be our own little clique. Let's get, you know, like I'm accepting you and you're accepting me, and we're judging that other person, so we're like in this together.
Yeah.
You know, it's
join our club.
Yeah. Even in my 40s, you know.
That's how people connect. That's how you learn to connect, but it's not a maybe healthy way to connect.
Right.
You know, and I find that if we can have, and I'm just saying this because my own personal experience, there's different groups, but if you can find a group of women that you come together and lift each other up, or if in your workspace, in your work environment, instead of stepping on each other to get to the next level, if you really work together and celebrate other successes so that you could be successful. Because if you're in a work environment and, you know, you don't have the tools to be successful, you're not going to feel successful or valued, you know. And or if you're, you know, so I think if you can find those people or cultivate those relationships that lift you up and support you and are coming from a place of love, and it doesn't mean that triggers don't happen and that things don't happen within that group, you know, that there aren't things to overcome, but how you handle it, it's way different than how maybe we have handled it in the past.
Well, and if you're working on those judgments yourself, and you're recognizing them, then you will actually attract those types of people to you. It's that ripple effect again. You know, you're putting out, you're getting back what you're putting out into the world.
Well, yeah, and then if you shift within yourself and then you go to an environment and you start, you know, having that, you're right, those people that don't align with that at that time will not be allowed to be in your experience, or it'll be very uncomfortable, you know. So
so what are some of the other tools? Are there other tools that you girls can think of that help with releasing judgment?
I mean, yeah, I think it's, let's see, meditations. I think it's really just acknowledging.
Ooh, sorry. I'm sorry, Angela. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just rambling. So what did you think?
No, I was just thinking some of the ways that we have found, I have found that can be helpful is the cord cutting.
Yes.
You know, like.
What is that? Explain to those of us or those of them, anyone watching.
Anyone that may be curious about what cord cutting.
What is a cord cutting? I mean, why would you want to do that? What is that?
Right. So with cords, so we're looking at this from an energetic perspective. And there are things that happen outside of ourselves, because our energetic fields actually extend outside of ourselves. And they can actually attach to other people. And the same thing happens where another person's cords or energetic cords is what we'll look at them as, can attach to us. And so when we make a judgment, especially if it's emotional, we can actually attach a cord to another person's energetic field. And it doesn't have to be someone close by. It can actually be, it could be thousands of miles away. If it's that strong for us, it can actually attach. And the same thing for them, where if they're having a judgment about us or anger towards us, they can actually send out an energetic cord to our energetic field. So the whole point of cord cutting is you're actually lovingly separating that cord from your energetic field. And I think the trick is loving, because I think that is still part of yourself. You still have, that energy, even if it was theirs, is still connected to you. So it's important to lovingly, sever it essentially and allow it to go back lovingly to them. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So that can actually be very powerful. It can be a very powerful way to start releasing some of those blocks that might be in place. And so that the next time that something like that comes up, you're not feeling so much energy. You're not feeling so much anger, or
You're not being triggered so emotionally.
right.
And it could even be like, it's not even somebody attaching to you, but it'd be something you're attaching to somebody else, not even realizing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a negative feeling that you're having about a situation or a person or something they did that triggered you, that had a response.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, the cord cutting is really good, and it's also
really effective.
It is very effective. I think that's a really good point. And then of course we have affirmations, which seems so silly, oh, I'm going to be successful, I'm going to do my affirmations, but it's just
well, an affirmation, as far as, and it can become very powerful, as we talked about, your thoughts are powerful. An affirmation is rewiring those neural pathways within the brain. So by saying, I release judgment and replace it with understanding and love. Release all judgment and replace it with understanding and love. As we're saying this right now, I invite anybody watching to say this statement with me and see how it feels, the vibration that it feels within your heart and your body. Because when you say a powerful statement like that and you bring it in as your truth, you can feel it within your body. So I release judgment and I replace it with understanding and unconditional love. And we'll say it again. I release judgment and I replace it with understanding and unconditional love. And how does that feel within your body?
I feel great.
It definitely makes you feel lighter. Especially if you think of a situation where you've been thinking anger, you've been a little bit angry about it because you've been judging.
Or hurt.
And take that statement and actually resonate with it. It just makes you feel lighter. Yeah.
And ultimately, that's what releasing judgment is doing. This is more about, not just because when we're judging someone else that we're energetically causing them harm, but more than anything, we're causing ourselves harm. We're causing ourselves disease within our body by judging someone else, bringing that vibration of that judgment, that harsh judgment to our body. Is lowering that vibration, and we're not doing ourselves any good by doing that.
It's funny, I was just talking to my 11-year-old son about forgiveness, which is kind of the same with judgment, and he was asking, how should I forgive this person? And I was like, it's really up to you, but forgiveness isn't for the other person, it's for yourself. If you're carrying around this hurt and this anger, and how healthy is that for you? And it was kind of interesting to have this conversation with my 11-year-old.
Yeah, he's probably never really thought of it. It's just he's learning that now for the first time.
Well, and I think when he's in that spot where his emotions are all over the place, he's trying to figure out who he is and what the world is about in a very, very stressful time in this planet. I wonder how are our kids going to be affected by this time, even though to them they're not really thinking, oh, it's traumatic, but it is.
Right.
Because, you know, they're getting inundated with news, they're getting inundated with our fear, with other people's fear, with this whole change of society, you know, and it's such an uncertain time that
they may not be recognizing it, but they are taking it in.
right.
Right.
So I think that sitting down, like if you're having difficulty recognizing maybe long-term judgments that you may not realize have been a part of your belief for so long, if that comes up, if a judgment comes up for you, recognizing it and saying, oh, I'm okay, yeah, that's something that I'm feeling this way, write it down. Or sit down and have some quiet time to yourself and write down some of the judgments that maybe you recognize that you've been having. And the key is if you're feeling strongly about it and it's bringing up anger for you, it's you're feeling it in your body, then write it down. And that's like that's a really helpful tool for you to start recognizing some of those long-term embedded judgments that you might have been having.
Yeah. And I think too, like writing it down, make a list, write down 5 judgments.
Yeah.
Don't judge yourself for having that judgment.
Right.
You know, and it might be like if you have a list of, okay, these are 5 judgments I had this week. And then I'm going to release and love this judgment. Some judgments you will find are going to be harder to release. And others might be a lot easier, you know, and if you just like release, okay, I can release these 3. These 2, that's going to take a little bit longer for me to get through. That's okay. You know, at least you're recognizing it and acknowledging it, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then, you know, all the things that we've talked about, the being empathetic, the having compassion, the having love, we have to handle those judgments with all of that too. And that's how you start working through them, is sending love to those
sending love to those judgments, you know. And once you have those judgments written down, even going back, asking yourself, when did this judgment my experience and a part of my story, when did I start having this judgment? You might not be able to trace it back. It might go back all the way to when you were a child and you were told to judge that, you know, but recognizing the timeline and the story behind that judgment and why it's there too is going to be able to help you start recognizing, oh, is this even my judgment? Is it something that I feel strongly about, or was I told to judge this? You know, recognizing and being able to release that.
And I think that's great, because if it stems back to maybe a thought or a mindset that was created, or it could stem back to like a traumatic event where that is where a long-term judgment is going to get harder to release. Because it's not just a judgment, it's tied into your human experience and has created that judgment, and it has a lot of stuff wrapped around it. So there's, like Rachel was saying in the very beginning, there's different types of judgments and why they come about and what their role is in your life. If that judgment was created out of something of safety, that I have to have this judgment because this was a traumatic experience and I need to be safe. It's different than, oh, this person did something to me, or this is something that I was told to think because it's in this parameter, may not have such a long-term hold or lasting effects as a traumatic event. So
with traumatic event things, you can actually, by going back and recognizing where it stems from, then you can ask yourself, does this serve me? Is this still serving me? Or can I release this now?
Right.
And it's okay if it still serves you, in a sense that we're not going to grow overnight. It's multi-levels to go through this. You know, we say, oh, stop judging. It's so easy. But there are judgments.
It's
it's
not. It may be where you're like, oh, this is a doozy. This is still serving me for some reason because I need this in my growth. I don't want it, but I need this until I get to a place where I no longer need it.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm not saying that judging, releasing judgment is easy. I think that it's the opposite. I think it's probably one of the hardest things that we can do. But it's like with any growth opportunity, it
like Angela said, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, and it's a work in progress, and it might be something that you're working on till you leave this lifetime, but you're
in the next one.
yeah, but just taking those steps, those little steps to release it out of your being so that you can raise your vibration and be healthier. This is
happy.
Being happy and healthy
and empowered.
And empowered. So we really hope that this has sparked some empowerment within you to work on, just give you something to work on within yourself and help raise your vibration. And we are so thankful that you have taken the time to watch this and to be here with us today. So we just want to thank you for joining us, and we hope that you feel empowered in moving through and releasing your own negative judgments.
You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, and sign up for our newsletter at empoweryourthoughts.com.
From all of us here at Empower Your Thoughts,
May you feel empowered.